Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we'll review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Nedarim, pages 26 through 32. Chavav, 26. Konam batzal sha'ani ta'im sha'batzal ra lalev. If a person were to say, I'm not going to have onions because onions are bad for the heart, and Amrulo, but then they tell him, it turns out you're wrong. Hello, kufri yafa lalev, that the kufri style onions are actually good for one's cardiovascular health. Huta b'kufri, then it turns out that he's actually allowed to have the kufri onion. V'lo b'kufri bilvad, but no, actually more than that. It's not just the kufri onion that he's permitted to have. The vow is no longer valid, and he's allowed to have all types of onions. There was an incident of this sort, where these sorts of things happened, and Rabbi Meir allowed the individual who made the vow to have all kinds of onions. Chaf Zayin. A person can falsely make a neder to a person who is an extortionist, a bandit, a robber baron, someone who's threatening, or lamochsim, or to a tax collector, shahid truma, that this item that they're trying to take from you is in fact truma, and thus off limits to anybody but a kohen. Afal pi she'ena truma, even though it's a lie, even though in fact this item is not truma, you can say that it is to escape the clutches of these bad actors. Shehen shel beit hamelech af pi she'ena beit hamelech. You're allowed to lie and say this item belongs to the royal treasury, that it's been dedicated to the royal treasury, even though in fact it has not been dedicated to the royal treasury. Again, an outright falsehood. You're allowed to say this. Why can you say it? Because you are only trying to save yourself and your finances from illegitimate exploitation. And so the Ribono Shel Olam and the legal system of the Torah can have mercy on you to use this method of a phony neder to escape what is an unfair treatment by strong-arm tactics, by a higher power. Chavchet, so 28. So the Gemara then asked an obvious question, Hamashmo dina de malchuta dina. How can you escape the tax collector that way? There is a concept articulated by Shmuel, which is a basic detail in the law, that the law of the land is the law. Dina de malchuta dina. You're supposed to follow the rules of the country in which you live. So if tax collectors are acting with government permission to collect this or that item from your possession, how can you then go ahead and lie about it being truma or being from the royal treasury? So the Gemara gives two answers. Amar Shmuel, b'meches she'en lo kitzvah. So one interpretation is we're talking about a tax collector who can take however much he wants. There's no set amount. There's no fixed rate of 20%, 25%, 30% based upon who you are, your income. Rather, they're on a whim able to grab for themselves whatever they want. Alternatively, Rabbi Yanai Omer, Meches Hamad Be'elav. We're talking about a tax collector who's not authorized by the government to collect anything. He's an independent operator with no legitimacy whatsoever. He claims to be a so-called tax collector, but really he's just an extortionist. So under those conditions, you could say whatever you want to get out of his demands. 29. Chavtet. Amirato lagavoa kemesirato lahedyot. Question is, when a person makes a statement, a declaration, that an item shall be to the temple or to God's treasury, is it necessary for there to be a physical handoff, a kinyan of some sort, in order for the person no longer to be the owner of it, the possessor of it, but rather for it now to belong to the higher authority of the Beit HaMikdash? And the answer is, it's unnecessary. Amirato la gavoa, merely saying the words that this belongs to Gavoa, to the upper realm, to Shamayim, to heaven, to Hashem, is the functional equivalent kemesirato la hedyot, like handing it over, misira, which is one of the methods of acquisition, to a hedyot, to a thing of flesh and blood. So Hashem's acquisitions happen even by just word of mouth of people, whereas a person's acquisition has to happen by real means. Lamed. Hanodem yodeh hayam. If a person were to make a solemn vow that they're not going to have any benefit from those who are the seafarers, those who go down to the ocean, muter biyoshvi abasha, he's allowed to have benefit from those who dwell on the dry land. Biyoshvi abasha, but if you make a solemn vow not to have benefit from those who dwell on dry land, asim yodeh hayam, you're still forbidden to have benefit from those who are the seafarers. Why? Because the seafarers are also included in the category of those who dwell on dry land. Nobody's on a boat forever. Eventually you got to come to the port and step on the soil. So some people are only on dry land, but even the seafarers are sometimes on dry land. And who's considered a seafarer? Not those people who take short little trips from Acre to Jaffa, from Akko to Jaffa, which is less than a one-day travel by the old ships of antiquity. Rather, the Yordei Hayam refer to those who regularly go on long voyages across the Mediterranean or beyond. Not these little short trips that are hardly anything at all. Lamed Aleph. If a person were to say, I'm not going to have any benefit from a Jew, then he can have commercial interactions with a Jew. However, he has to buy overpriced stuff and sell at a lowball price. So both on the buying end and on the receiving end, he's losing out. And the other fellow, the other Jew, is benefiting. If a person says a Jew can't benefit from me, then he has to buy it at a cheap price, and sell it at an overcharging price, a steeper price. Well, that's great. He's making a lot of money that way. However, in Shaman law, nobody's going to listen to him. Nobody's going to want to do business with him if he insists upon marking it down in one direction, marking it up in another direction to his benefit. If a person were to say, I'm not going to benefit from the Jews and they're not going to benefit from me, well then no commercial interactions are possible between him and the other Jews. What should he do? Have his commercial interactions with Gentiles. That's his solution. 32. The great merit which is associated with the performance of the mitzvah of Brit Milah, circumcision, as great as it is, Moshe Rabbeinu, he had many great merits, but Milah he had neglected to do for his own child, and as a result, his many great merits did not stand in his favor when compared to the failure on the Milah front. He told that when Moshe was traveling from Midian back to Mitzrayim, he stopped off at the hotel, and God or a malach tried to kill him. Why? Because he had neglected to circumcise his boy. So then the Gemara says, no, don't think for a second that Moses was neglectful when it comes to the mitzvah of circumcision for his own children. Rather, why was Moshe punished? Because he first took care of the hotel arrangements and only then got around to doing the circumcision when he should have acted with alacrity and done the milah first. Everyone have a great week.